So I'm here today with SD Bullion, and a quick introduction. Cole, introduction, please.
Yeah, Cole Keller, COO of SD Bullion, head trader, as well over merchandising, product management, prices, inventory, product development, things like that.
And our good friend Chase.
Hey guys, hopefully you remember me. Chase Turner, CEO, SD Bullion. I've been with the company now since 2016, about when we first started working together. JB, I think, when I reached out to you.
Yep. And real quick, that's like really when I started this channel. Chase reached out to me when I had about 10,000 subscribers. Many of you also reached out to me and said, hey, SD Bullion is a great place. That's where you should be buying gold and silver. And then Chase reached out to me, and we've been friends ever since, had a great relationship. The company's been great. And we just want to come by, Aaron, Enrique, myself, but I wanted to make this stop while we were on our way to Alabama. In Texas here. We had some time today. We made a drive up here, and I wanted to come by and thank Chase. I wanted to thank Cole, SD Bullion, for the great relationship. They've been great to the people that watch this channel. They've been great to me. I've been a client of SD Bullion for seven, almost 8 years now of myself. Everything I've bought has been through SD Bullion, so I just want to come by and thank them for that and the great service they've given the people that watch my channel and myself and my family and my friends who also are clients of SD Bullion. So that aside, we're done with that. We're going to start with a few questions. I know Aaron wanted to ask a question here with Cole and Chase, and we're not going to take up their whole day, but go ahead.
So mainly this was for Chase, because I know we did an interview a year ago. So, and Cole, you're also welcome to chime in. I know I asked you this at lunch, but do you ever think that there's going to be a point, I remember I asked you this, that silver and gold will not be obtainable?
Okay. First of all, JB, we got to say we were upstairs. You got to see some of our phone people,
Yep.
and your followers have been great to SD Bullion. They said they hear your name a lot, right?
Yep.
So we were hoping somebody would call in while you were here, so you could talk to them, but it didn't happen. Gold and silver, Tatum, I mean, we saw that actually recently in recent years, where the world was shut down. Could the world be shut down from another event? Sure, it could be. Obviously, that was temporary. Will we see a scenario where it's not attainable for a long period of time? I don't know. That's an event I don't want to be around for. So that would be my personal answer. But Cole, that's on Cole's side of the business. So we'll see what he said.
Yeah, unobtainable is an interesting word. So if you think about it, a lot of the material that comes in that people can interact with the gold is not necessarily in physically minted bullion coins. It's going to be in recycled, so jewelry, things of that nature. So unobtainable, probably not, because whenever gold goes up, people want to take their jewelry that maybe they've inherited, maybe they've just had, maybe they need cash, maybe they go offer that to the marketplace. And there's a ton of material that gets refined annually. We just spoke with one of the leading Swiss refiners up at our facility. And so that's kind of an entirely different side of the market that people don't really understand. They'll probably be more creative in finding ways to distribute it in smaller increments as well, if gold gets up to $50,000 an ounce or something like that. So unobtainable, no. But we do see bigger and bigger waves. The pie has grown by more than 10% or 10x is what we would say in terms of physical retail demand and the footprint of the marketplace. So if we see another black swan type event that we've seen maybe 3 or 4 of in the last couple of years hit the marketplace, we're not going to be able to keep up. There's just not enough supply.
Now I got to ask you this, Cole. We're sitting here just moments ago. Silver just broke $2 up today. Yeah. What do you attribute that to?
Yeah, it's a good question. If we actually had the answer, we would have been a lot longer this morning, and we would have been riding it even harder than we already are. So usually you see silver being a lag indicator. Gold is a little bit more easy to identify the root cause, where central banks and larger institutional players are getting into that and looking to get it, hold it, and really stash it away. I mean, we brought up BRICS. I'm sure you guys got a question on that. Exactly how much they're participating, we don't necessarily know. But silver is going to follow that. Remember, silver's demand predominantly is industrial. So silver going up $2 gives you an idea of maybe what people's expectations are on industrial use. Things like solar panels, all these different things for industrial use. Retail demand isn't going to be what drives price of silver. It's going to be people expecting to be producing products that do contain silver in the future.
Okay, Enrique, anything?
Yes, so I know for a fact that a lot of the people here that watch JB's channel, I've actually talked to a couple of my clients that have actually gone through his channel. And a lot of them, they're not very, very wealthy, but they do have, let's say per year, they can do $5, $10, $15,000 into something, silver assets or gold assets. My question to you is, for those people that want to start investing, or maybe they do it once a year or once every 6 months, how do you recommend, like what ratio of gold and silver do you recommend that they put their money in? Or whether or not, what type of products do you think would be suitable for those types of investors?
Yeah, I can handle that one. So first off, the question of what you put it in. I mean, right now with the gold to silver ratio the way it is, I'm always saying, hey, if you're new, I would be 70% silver, 30% gold. Now, of course, that's going to be a little bit more aggressive. Gold's always your more conservative play, although up 40% in 1 year, or I guess it's 32% in 1 year. That's not very. It's moving quite a bit this year. But and then as you kind of get going, I would say move it back to like a 50-50 ratio. That's kind of how I would. If one of my friends was asking me, that would be one of my answers. Silver just has so much more to go, right? It's so undervalued. I mean, we were talking earlier at lunch here, and it's like, okay, the sticker shock of gold at 2,700 plus. Yes, silver's up $2, but I was buying it all the way up to $50 in 2011. So there's still got a long ways to go before it even touches its all-time high, right? So that's why I always recommend the gold to silver ratio. You should always look at it because historically, it's definitely fluctuation, and you can trade those things, right? We see that happen a lot with our clients as the ratios will move. People will be buying, people will be selling to take advantage. Not just that ratio, but also premium ratio, right? So what do you get into? Well, if we look at the last couple of years, U.S. Silver Eagles were trading like crazy. I think the highest I've seen was $30 over spot. Okay, not sure why people were buying Silver Eagles at that point. It definitely wasn't a recommendation from us, but we had plenty of people that would sell Silver Eagles and buy something cheaper. So you could sell a Silver Eagle in 2020. It was about 18 months ago for $12 over spot. Buy a bar for like $4 over spot. Arbitrage $8 premium. Yeah. Grow your stack by 30% with doing nothing. Well, now that that's kind of came back, you could say, well, Silver Eagles are now back. You can buy them. We launched a deal to our VIP list yesterday, I think, for $3.99 over spot. And so I would be going into Buoyants, Silver Eagles, Silver Maples, Silver Britannias, and some bars and rounds. I would strictly stick with Buoyant, especially if you're a beginner. Don't even if somebody utters the word collectible or premium appreciation, all that stuff, just stay away from it. Get the main things that people are gonna. That's very liquid, right? Silver Eagles, silver bars, very liquid. And then the other thing that we should keep in mind, maybe if you say like okay, $10,000 to $15,000 a year to invest, okay. One thing to keep in mind, we just launched last year. We talked about when we met JB, and the business has been doing really well. Is retirement accounts. If people have money in their retirement accounts, you can actually put a portion of that, as much as you want. I would never say put all of your metal. I'm not a financial advisor, right? But if you can move you can move funds from a retirement account into physical precious metals, not SLV, not the paper stuff that we know on the market that has no backing by physical. You can put it in physical precious metals allocated in your retirement account. That's totally accounted to you. So no matter what happens, if the market collapses, you still have the physical gold and silver in your retirement account, and it has all the benefits that your retirement account has. So if you bought gold at 2,700 and it went to 5,000, I'm just obviously these hypotheticals, but any of that and you sold, that would all grow tax free, just like it does in your retirement account now. So a lot of people don't understand that, or they don't know about it. But if you have money in your retirement account and you want to protect those funds, and we'll see what happens in this election. We talked about, there could be some even more crazy things ahead. Yeah. One way to do it is to move retirement funds into physical gold and silver, which we're having a lot of customers do.
And you touched on something. I'll ask Cole. Paper gold, paper silver, GLD, SLV versus the physical metal. I think a lot of people are confused about that. Yeah. The paper metal versus the real physical metal. Maybe Cole can elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, put simply, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. A lot of those assets are meant to be derivatives by nature. They offer very diminished upside in the event that you actually look to realize the benefit of the move of the actual metal. And most of the time, whenever you do really want gold or silver in your possession is whenever you feel like you need it. Paper offers really nothing in the form of actually servicing your needs there.
Aaron.
So I had a question about sales volume. Are people buying right now? Selling? Who's buying? Who's selling? Y'all seeing more larger orders, or a lot of smaller orders? Like what are y'all getting for sales?
Yeah, I'd say the best way to answer that is almost from what we've seen is an erosion of the middle class, I guess, which is kind of interesting as a window on America in general. There's not the typical coming in $20,000 here, $30,000 there, $50,000 here, $10,000, whatever. Those orders have kind of been put to the side, and they're not really coming through as often. And what we're seeing instead is a lot of the smaller orders, people looking to increase their stack with $500, and then the big fish, people coming in with figures. I mean, we get multiple inquiries a month that are in the 8-digit range, so north of $10 million, and those are often not really that legitimate, but we're seeing more of that activity where it is legitimate. And those people are pretty savvy. They have an idea what they want, and they're really not as price sensitive as you would think. The customer that calls in trying to spend $300 is sitting there refreshing the price chart. Oh no, oh yay. And then the guy that's got $20 million says, yeah, I'm not worried about that. I know why I'm buying it.
Really quick, we were talking at lunch. You're seeing a lot of selling right now with the middle class, and we've seen a lot of people we know in the business that have coin shops, pawn shops, all that. People coming in selling the silver, selling the gold because they got to make a house payment, rent payment, car payment. People trying to save their businesses, so a lot of selling going on. But the big fish are coming in and buying this up.
Yeah, I think that's the point, right? If we look at what's happened with inflation, with the economy, with everything, it's eroding the middle class. The price of gold at $2,700 becomes more affordable every single day, and so we've seen, like what Cole said, we've seen an uptick in people. I remember, been doing this for a long time. JB is like, when I started, there was maybe 6 of us, and if we got $1 million order in the full year, that would have been an exciting thing at SD Bullion.
Yeah.
Now you're seeing it, I wouldn't say weekly, but almost weekly, to where you're seeing 7-figure customers, right? And so there's definitely been an uptick in larger money coming into gold and silver. And unfortunately, as the prices go up, you do see a lot of right there in the middle class people selling to. A lot of them tell us because, like you said, they have to make payments.
Right.
And so it's unfortunate to see, but it's the reality that we're living in right now.
And then also to tag in, so we were talking about this at lunch. People sometimes look at their gold and silver like they would look at equities. The price goes up, therefore I sell. Whenever the price has been on a slow run up as it has been, that's continued to shake the tree in the marketplace. So effectively, premiums have been down for the retail person looking to actually sell their stack. So it's worked as a counter trade that's really disadvantageous to anyone that's maybe bought in the last 3 years. So you bought in an environment where premiums were maybe 2 or 3 or 4x, or maybe something even crazier depending on when you did it.
Yeah.
And now you're selling in an environment where premiums have never been less in the last 5 years. So you're just kind of losing on both sides, whereas the institutions are winning because they're just buying in volume and driving up the base metal.
And you'd probably say that the guy spending $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, he's more savvy. He's probably a little bit more sophisticated than the average retail buyer.
Yeah, literally their commentary, and we've had multiple interactions with these types of clients in the last couple of weeks, and there's some things that apply directly to each of them. They're independent of each other, but they're saying the same thing. They're like, I don't really care about when I'm able to do this. It's whenever I have cash coming out of 1 or 2 transactions I'm working on, call it a real estate deal. Whenever that's in cash, I'm immediately rolling that into precious metals. I don't care what spot is.
Interesting. Enrique.
Yeah, so earlier you guys had mentioned that a lot of your clients, they're buying eight figures of metal. And so obviously with that in mind, if a lot of that is considered silver or even gold, you're going to have issues with how to store it or, metal storage options. So I wanted to see how people would go about to be able to do a metal storage, whether or not you offer it, or if you have third parties that offer it, or how you would go about doing that.
Yeah, sure. That is usually the first thing we ask if somebody calls in, especially if they're new to the industry. They say, hey, I want to, $500,000 or $1 million, whatever the number is. First, after we get the deal done, okay, what are you going to do with it? Because a lot of people don't know that your home insurance isn't going to cover that, right? So worst case scenario, something happens to that stack, it's gone. Home insurance isn't going to cover it. You can actually buy your own vault and build your own vault and insure that, but it's crazy expensive. And we do have people that obviously they have plans with very large stacks of metal. At SD Bullion, we do have our own depository. JB tried to get you up there last year for Christmas. You're open invite to come up there, check it out for yourself and see it. But we're the only one of the only actual bullion dealers, especially of our size, that has our own depository in house. So let's say somebody wants to buy $1 million from us, or it doesn't matter. We have no minimum. We have storage customers of all size. They store it right in our vault. It never has to leave. It never has to get in a carrier to be lost or whatever can happen when you're transporting millions of dollars of metals. And it stays right in our facility that houses all of our gold and silver inventory as well. And that's also where the IRA is stored. So if you moved retirement funds into physical gold and silver, it's going to be stored in the same building. They're obviously separate because one's a private depository, one's a retirement depository. But we do offer that service, and that is a growing business for us, especially people coming in with large volumes of precious metals. They will take some to their house, but obviously for protection, it's fully insured, obviously, at our facility. They want that protection. They want that peace of mind. They could leave it with us to protect. And when they travel, when they do their life, they don't have to worry about it.
And it's also easier to move in and out of a position if you already have a storage agreement. So sometimes people want to buy $2 million worth of gold, $100,000 worth of gold or silver, and they want it at their house. Well, great. In the event that all of a sudden they decide they want to do something with that and sell it back, well, now you're looking at logistics costs to get it back. You're having to ensure that there's a duration period while it's in transit. That, if you're an individual packing up your own metal, maybe you're not going to do as good of a job as it is coming from our facility where we're professionals at packing stuff up and shipping thousands of orders a day. Right. So you can actually sell and get a locked in price and get the transaction completed basically in 24 hours where you do have money.
Sure.
All right. So another thing we talked about this at lunch, but just for the viewers for this, are y'all having any issues sourcing any metal or certain types of products? So like I know during, I think it was 2021, there was a huge shortage of the constitutional silver. So are there any products or anything y'all are having issues sourcing at the moment?
No, not really any issues sourcing. Remember, constitutional silver along with pre-33 gold, since it's not being newly made, it's a very cyclical thing in terms of how supply and demand works. So I would encourage people to actually study that a little bit independently and maybe lean into that whenever it is available. It is flush and it is cheap relative to whenever it's not. In the event that gold and silver demand goes up, right now, whenever we're buying constitutional silver on the broader wholesale market, we're basically paying melt for that spot price. Whenever it gets hot, we're having to pay $3 or $4 over spot because you just can't get it. So we're naturally bullish as a company and individuals on that type of asset. And then you think about things called pre-33 gold. Do your own homework. Some of those do trade like bullion, the $20 pieces, the libs and saints, and maybe BU, VF condition, right? A gold eagle from the U.S. Mint is going to cost an AP 3%. Whenever gold's at $27.50, doing some quick back of the napkin math, you're having to pay roughly $80 just to get it. And that means as a retail guy, you can't really get a hold of it unless you're paying north of $100. Well, since there's so much gold in the marketplace, premiums on pre-33 are roughly half of that. So you're kind of, Chase mentioned the word arbitrage earlier. If you apply that to some of these product segments, you can extract a little bit of incremental value. Maybe on gold, it's $50 an ounce if you're a little bit savvy. On silver, maybe it's $1, $2 an ounce. To answer the broad question, no, there's not really a shortage of anything right now because the secondary market's the most active it's been in 5 years. And sovereign mints have more capacity now, so they're sitting there wondering what to do with it.
Here's a question I'll ask both of you. I don't get political on the show, but question, what if Mr. T loses the election? What will we see in regards to metals?
You want to field that one?
Sure. I mean, I think if you asked anybody in our industry, in fact, we in August we did a conference with basically everybody that's in our industry, and we just got back from one this last weekend, and this is something that everybody's talking about as we're getting close in the industry. What would happen? The general assumption is that if Harris wins, our industry is going to be very busy, and if Trump wins, it's probably going to be pretty slow. I mean, if you looked back when he was in office between 16 and before COVID, right? It was very slow. The metals traded sideways. People were getting in the market. They weren't, the gold is the ultimate safe haven.
Yeah.
They didn't feel like they needed it. So we're a long way from when he was in office in 2016. There's been a lot of money printed, as we've talked about. There's a lot of turmoil. So I don't think it's going to be as smooth sailing as it was if he wins. But the expectation is if Harris wins, we're going to be very busy.
Yeah. What about, I mean, to me, whoever wins, nobody's really talking about the debt.
Yeah.
There's so much debt out there. Mr. T, Harris, whoever wins, somebody's going to have to deal with a lot of debt. And I see inflation is not really going to be 2%, and it's nowhere near 2% in the real world that I live in. So, Cole, what about the debt? I mean, no matter who's president, at some point, don't we have to worry about the debt?
At this point, we've had, 3 presidential debates and 1 or 2 vice presidential debates, and the debt hasn't come up one time to my recollection.
That's my point.
Which is alarming, consider I'm, on the a little bit of the younger side. It's politically unpopular. They have zero incentive to even bring it up because the average voter isn't even holding them accountable. So what's going to happen with it? We've seen with, you call him Mr. T, he's not afraid of debt. Personally, he's used it quite a bit in his ventures, and he did it publicly with the U.S. Treasury whenever he was in office. We've seen that out of both parties, frankly. So debt's going to continue to skyrocket. I mean, they're going to continue to find ways to redefine it. Remember now, whenever they are releasing anything from an inflation perspective, they're also packaging it to you and telling you what to think about it before you even get the actual number. They're changing metrics that go into it. They're pulling out steak and they're putting bologna and all these different things. And they're like, well, here's what you should think, and it's not that bad.
So it's really hard to believe any of the data with inflation, the job numbers, GDP. Because yes, the metrics, the formulations have all changed. They're not like, we don't measure inflation like we did back in the 1980s. At the end of the day, but we know the debt is approaching $36 trillion, unfunded liabilities nearly $200 trillion, global debt $313 trillion. We're paying $1 trillion in interest now just on our debt, and that's going to go to 1.5 very, very shortly. So it would seem to me that no matter who wins, that the metals aren't going to go away, that it's probably more important than ever to be owning this stuff.
Yeah, remember, metals are always a lag indicator of all these other things that we see in real time, 2022, 2023, 2024, and we're like, okay, come on. That's going to be positive for metals. And actually, in the short-term trade, you see it negative because people have cash concerns, liquidity on all their other assets from an institutional perspective. So, yeah, the debt's not going anywhere. There's zero incentive for a politician to actually solve that problem. And to even have the want to solve that problem would be, for their career, a degree of suicide. It's not going to ever work.
So the only thing they can really do now is print more money
Correct.
and push interest rates back down. But that's what got us into this mess to begin with. So if they do this again, it's just going to make things even worse when things do implode. We're just raising the diving board even higher, jumping into an empty swimming pool.
Well, yeah, I would say who says they don't want to do that?
Right.
We talked about it at lunch. I spent 2 years in Brazil. My biggest takeaway from that time frame was the whole system was built to squash the middle class, keep the elites elite, keep the poor poor. If you look at any part of Brazil, the entire system is systemic. It's just like that.
Right.
The little middle class there is, most of them worked for the government. Right. So when I look at what we're doing in the U.S., I say, how do we know that's not their plan?
Right.
And if we look at, we talk about wealth transfers. I remember one of the first books I read in 2009, when I first started getting into gold and silver, talked about the greatest wealth transfer of all time is coming. I asked a question if we were at dinner saying, how do we know we didn't see that during COVID? Because think about how much money was printed, where did it go?
Right.
And now you have people that, during COVID and getting all the money, and now people can't afford bills, people can't afford rent. But what happened to the rich people? They're richer than they were.
Right. We have more
They got
billionaires.
so much money,
Yep.
they don't even know what to do with
Yep.
it. Like, there's some of the stories that we hear in the gold and silver space where people will want just their own 10-kilo gold coin made just because they
don't know
literally
what
to
to
put
do
on their
with it.
coffee table just because they don't know what to do with all their money. So how do we know this is not on purpose? How do we
Right,
know we
right.
didn't already
No, it
live
could've
through
all-
the greatest wealth
Could
transfer
all
of all
been
time?
orchestrated to create this crisis, this wealth transfer.
Yep.
Enrique.
Yes, so obviously, since a lot of people are getting into a situation where it's getting harder and harder for people to save, possibly there's a lot of people out there too that want to know how they can go about to be able to put a lot of their retirement money into the gold and silver space And so I wanted to see if maybe you could give a little bit of outline on the procedure of that as well.
Yeah, it's overall it's pretty simple because it's not as simple as just calling and buying gold because it is in your retirement account. There's some steps to jump through. We created the best system out there to do it. Before last year, when we launched our program, you would have to call, fill out physical applications, deal with 3 different parties. At SD Bullion, just call us 1-800-294-8732 extension 4. Talk to an IRA rep, and we'll send application digitally. We'll help transfer the money over. Essentially, you have to start what's called a self-directed IRA. Once you start that, you can move your funds into that IRA, and you can self-direct them any way you want, really. And a lot of people are doing that to buy gold.
Okay, cool.
All right, so let's talk about BRICS. So I know we just had the question about the president election. I personally don't think it matters who the next president is, because I think the U.S. is starting to lose their pull on the world stage of controlling the monetary system. And so I think BRICS, with all these central banks and these countries that are buying these metals at the fastest pace that they have ever done in the last 5 years, I don't think the elections matter. So how do you think on the 22nd of this month, they're having the big meeting in Russia where they've talked about possibly releasing the unit or talking about the unit, which is supposed to be backed by 40% gold. So how do you think that's going to affect the metal space?
Yeah, I'd say, Aaron, I agree when we're talking about the election. I think even if Trump wins, it's just a short-term Band-Aid to a longer-term problem, right? And at the end of the day, that's what this always comes down to. Gold has, for at least 5,000 years or more, has accounted for currency in the world, right? Globally, has nothing to do with just the U.S. Gold is a global currency. And so when we look at BRICS, I mean, BRICS has been developing for years now, right? When these first started in 2008, maybe, or before that.
Yeah,
and so it's not like a new topic. And at the end of the day, it's not hard to look across the horizon and just say, in general, if you're one of these countries, it benefits you to get away from the U.S. dollar, right? If we were one of the countries, we would be trying to get away from whatever dollar had control of us.
Yes,
so it's just a matter of time.
America has 9,000 sanctions across the globe right now. So who doesn't want to get out of the dollar?
Yeah. So it's just, every day that goes by is a day closer to the dollar's death. And, what comes next, I don't know. But what we do know is gold has always been a preservation of wealth. And so I guess I could say I'm not a financial advisor. It's never lost in the history of the world.
Will we see a time where people begin to measure their wealth in ounces and not dollars?
Well, you already see that overseas, right? Just because it doesn't happen in this country doesn't mean they don't do it overseas. I mean, India does it. A bunch of Asian countries do it. A lot of these countries, they don't save in Germany, actually. Germany has a huge stacking population because they've lived through multiple world wars, multiple currencies. The U.S. is relatively still a new country. Haven't seen a lot of carnage, but I think, of course, we're going to go there. That's history repeats itself.
You bring up a good point. Americans, in my opinion, have gotten very soft, very out of shape, very mentally weak. We've never been through a Great Depression. Most of us have never been to a real war. We're not as strong as our grandparents were. We've never really seen tough times where most of the world has. And we just think we're immune because we're America. We have the U.S. dollar. Nothing bad can ever happen to us. Nothing bad can ever happen on U.S. soil. What do you say to people out there? Because I think these people are living in fantasy land. Cole.
Yeah, I think it's easy to say what's coming next. I think the best indication of that is go back in time and look at what's happened to other civilizations that were around in a much more powerful way for a longer period of time. There's I forget. I think he was an economist, an Austrian economist, I believe, from like the 18th century. Alexander Fraser Tytler has the cycle of democracy. I would encourage everyone to kind of look that up. There's roughly 7 phases, and it just embodies kind of what you just said, where you kind of look at the history of the American Republic, and we're at roughly phase 4.5 of the 7, but it kind of goes through that entire thing.
And Cole, we are a consumer nation. 70% of our GDP is consumption. And so how prepared are we as a nation really for what's coming? How many lives will be overturned if they woke up one day and God forbid, the world reserve currency, the U.S. dollar, is no longer the world reserve currency. And, countries that we buy physical goods and products from that we're just using this monopoly money for. There's a lot of resentment now with the wars we've begun, the weaponization, and giving this monopoly money for physical goods that these countries create, and we're just giving them funny money. And I think there's a lot of resentment now towards America, and I think America better wake up and be really, really careful here, because we're, 90% of our pharmaceuticals coming in from Asia. We're importing a lot of food. We're importing everything that are on those store shelves, automobiles, so much. What in the world would we do if we ever got into a war with China and China said, we're intimidating, we're trying to intimidate China right now at Taiwan, saying we're going to sanction you. How in the world could we sanction China when China literally is selling us everything? This country could not live a day without China now.
Yeah, I mean, just look at what happens whenever a snowstorm comes through an area. People panic and they're like, oh my gosh, got to get the milk and bread. And there's outright panic. We talked about, and I agree, that the average American, if you want to call it that, certainly the average American male is much weaker than maybe it was 50 to 60 years ago.
Low T.
So they haven't ever had any strife. Usually every generation, if you look back since basically the 1800s, every generation kind of had something in their 20s that was real conflict that they had to collectively work through. Now, what's the conflict of the average 20-year-old to work through? It kind of gets into social politics, and it's creating problems that didn't really exist.
Yeah.
So what happens whenever those folks are faced with an actual real dilemma? They're not remotely prepared to be able to deal with it.
I guess the good times have created weak men. Enrique.
Yeah, so another thing is I know SD Bullion, obviously it's a website that anybody can access. And so I was wondering too as well, how's the international ratio? Do you have like international buyers that come in? And if you do, like, what are you seeing? If you do have international buyers, do you see them outperform the people here in the U.S. on purchases, or how do you see that spectrum?
Yeah, so SD Bullion does ship all over the world, not to every country, obviously. A lot of places that would never make it there to the end user. Let's be honest. It is a smaller portion of our business. We have the thing that's popular with internationals is if they want to get out of their country, they buy gold and store it at our facility in the U.S. Right? That's pretty popular. And then the other, I would say, one of the more common international orders is actually to our military on military bases throughout the world. So we ship gold and silver to tons of our soldiers, which is kind of cool if you think about it. Yeah.
Any more questions? Okay. We're not going to take up the whole day here, but I'll leave with one last question to both of you. Cole, where do we see gold and silver at the end of the year? What's the number?
End of the year, predicting a number.
Gosh.
I'm on the shy side of 2850.
Okay, gold, silver.
I think we're then stretching distance to the 3,000 mark. Silver, I think we're probably going to settle at basically high 31s.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay. All right.
I think it depends on the election, honestly.
All right. Yeah, I think so. So again, I want to thank all of you. Thanks again. I'm just shocked. Anyways, it was a pleasure coming down today, seeing the offices here, and Chase, always an honor to speak with you. We've been friends for a number of years. Cole, good seeing you today. Really appreciate that, and SD Bullion's been fantastic. So, really appreciate the time, and I think a lot of people out watching this video learned a lot today. And if they need to get a hold of you,
yep. SDBullion.com, S as in Sam, D as in David, Bullion.com. You can find us everywhere online. We're the largest independent retailer online, so you can't miss us.
Okay. Cole, anything you want to close with?
No, thanks for coming. I appreciate the opportunity to show you what was a busy day on the sales floor a little bit, and hopefully it keeps picking up.
All right. Talk to all of you later. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, look forward to talking to all of you.
And SD Bullion, link down below.
Link down below.